What is going on, man? I hope you guys are doing fantastic. And first and foremost, I would like to thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Masculine Health Solutions podcast. Today, I had the privilege to speak to James Good. James is one of the leading experts in the world of video game addiction. And through Gamefree, he helps thousands of guys every month take control of their gaming and level up in the real world. He's been gaming since he was 4, and it was never a problem growing up until he got to university, and at one point he played for 32 hours straight. No eating, sleeping, or leaving his room. He just realized that he was addicted. And at this point, he said, you know what? I gotta kick this habit. Like anybody else has got to kick one of them horrible vices. He came to this moment of revelation, right? But the thing is, just like anybody else that's trying to kick anything in his life, he had his relapses, setbacks, and self-destructive habits that basically forced him to think about addiction in a new way, right? And that's when he created Gamefree, right? And gamefree.gg, make sure you hit him up and check it out, right? It's completely different to the more traditional and popular methods of quitting, detoxing, and relapsing. And people have spent years trying to quit, and have suddenly overcome their addiction in a matter of hours. Now, alongside with his professional job in marketing, James Good is building a movement to educate men on the harmful effects of gaming and their other digital addictions. Porn, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, and inspire them to build an incredible life for themselves outside of the virtual world. Guys, this conversation I thought was extremely relevant and something that, like I said before, it kind of boggles my mind because it's something that I really did not know about. I myself, the most I really know about video games is Fortnite because my son plays it. But outside of that, I do not really, video games have never been my thing. But it was extremely eye-opening to have this conversation with James, and I really loved it because, man, I learned a lot, and I think a lot of us are struggling with all kinds of different things, and it was just a great way for me to learn about how other guys, have their struggles and overcome them and make something beautiful outside of that, right? And that's what Masculine Health Solutions is all about. I'm trying to just help as many dudes as possible overcome and basically find a way to just come out the other side stronger. There's always light at the end of the tunnel. So if you are struggling, or if you know anybody that is, or you want to learn more about James Good, be sure to hit him up on Instagram. The link is in the description. And check out gamefree.gg. All right, let's jump on into this one because I know you guys will enjoy it. All right, penis enhancement may seem like a difficult endeavor. However, Me Coach makes it simple. We all know the best way to reach your goals as fast as possible is with a coach. Me Coach offers you just that by giving you an individualized, tailor-made plan specific to your needs. Me Coach has helped thousands of clients improve erectile quality, increase penis length, penis girth, and has helped men improve their sexual stamina to last a whole lot longer. Me Coach is about actually helping you every step of the way in your penis enlargement journey. Unlike many of the crazy gimmicks you may see online, what sets Me Coach apart is the approach. First off, you will get your program created for you by AJ Big Al Alfaro and his team of trusted professionals who have been helping men in the PE realm for decades. They put their expertise into making your program. By using Me Coach, you will have AJ every step of the way to make sure you're exercising safely and effectively to reach your goals. Me Coach focuses on seeing you get to where you want to go in the safest, most efficient way possible. Me Coach also helps men suffering from abnormal curvatures in their penises by using specialized techniques to straighten things out. If you are ready to take your penis enhancement to the next level, you can totally try it out now, risk-free. Now, if you get started, it will start off with a new client interview, customized routine to achieve your goals, Me Coach progress log, access to over 30 exercises, 10 routines, safety guides, one-on-one personal penis training, and a 60-day money-back guarantee. So be sure to check out Me Coach by clicking the link in the description below. What's going on, gentlemen? Welcome to another episode here at the Masculine Health Solutions podcast. Today I'm joined by James Good. James, how are you today, sir?
I'm doing fantastic, thank you.
So tell us a little bit about your journey, about basically what started you realizing that you had an issue and that you had to deal with it and how you went about, beating this thing, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's been an interesting few years, really. It's because I started playing video games pretty young, like 3 or 4 years old, but it was maybe once a week, like retro gaming with my parents or something on the old N64 or Mega Drive consoles. And I was a super active kid. I was in the Scouts, played football, always out with my friends, cycling, whatever. And when I was a teenager, that's when kind of online gaming really exploded. Like Xbox Live, Call of Duty, wireless internet, all this stuff. No more having to wait until your mum was off the phone before you could use the internet. And as I became kind of less and less involved with school, because I didn't really need to do much work. I was a really bright kid. So I would just come home, play video games, go and have dinner, play video games up in my room with my friends, and I'd repeat that day in, day out. But obviously, over time, and I'm sure we'll get into this more later, what I was doing was wearing down my ability to deal with hard things, to build discipline, and all these skills you need. So when I went off to university, I just crumbled. It was so hard, so difficult. I had all this responsibility, and yet no way of dealing with it. I didn't know what to do. So all this kind of built up, and gaming was my escape, my safe space. Some people have gambling, drugs, drinking, like anything. There's so many different ways that you can try and escape from your problems. And mine just happened to be video games. And what would happen is I would play video games every single night at university until about 2 or 3 a.m. And then if I had some work, some coursework due, it's usually due about 10 o'clock in the morning. We have to go and deliver it into the I don't know what you call it, like the collection box for all of our work. And I had 2 weeks to do every bit of work, but I would leave it until 3 a.m., 6 hours before it was due, every single time. And this was multiple times a month. And obviously, this continued and can't continue forever. It built up and up and
Jeez.
up. And it was at the height of it, I played over 32 hours straight on one weekend. I just sat down. I knew I was close to finishing a game. It was Dark Souls, the game was. And I was like, oh, I'll just finish this in a few hours. A few hours didn't come. It was just non-stop. And I thought, oh, might as well just ride it out to the end. And I got so absorbed. I didn't eat or sleep. I didn't leave my room. I was just in my robe, like a dressing gown kind of thing. Just sat there like a goblin in a cave. And I emerged like the door was like cracking from all the crust. Like felt like it had been that long. And I came out, and my friends, my guy friends in the that I lived with, were congratulating me on finishing the game. And the girls that I lived with were so worried. They were about to call the campus security. They were really worried. They had no idea what I was doing. But
Wow.
all my mates were like, "Oh, nice one, mate. Well done. That was a huge achievement."
Jeez.
And I still didn't think there was a problem. And it wasn't until I got into like entrepreneurship and personal development. It
Hmm.
started with Ty Lopez
Oh
here in
yeah.
my garage. Yeah, for some reason that advert just sucked me in, and I couldn't stop watching it. And I ordered his like top 3 books, got really into that kind of thing, and was looking at ways I could become more efficient with my time,
Hmm.
optimize my schedule, and just improve myself basically. And the first thing I looked at was gaming. So I Googled, how do I quit playing video games? This guy popped up, Cam. He runs a business called Game Quitters that I actually went on to work with about 5 years later.
Wow.
Um, and reading these stories from people, that had experienced the exact same problems as me, exact same situation at school, bright kid, became reclusive into video games, using it as an escape mechanism, had no discipline to cope with problems, no way of dealing with responsibility. All these things were exactly the same as every other guy on this
Mhm.
platform, this community. And so, yeah, that was the first time I quit video games. I was about 19, 20, and I did it for 8 months, I think, before I just crashed back into it. But they were the best 8 months of my university career, man. They were incredible.
So
And yeah, that was,
did you
yeah, that
feel
was it.
like that was like a relapse though, or not a relapse, but did you find that it kind of just, I don't know, let's say you're going about your day and it almost sucked you in the same way another addiction kind of works in the same way, where you're like just thinking about it in the back of your head about how am I going to go back to that, like how do
Hmm.
I get out of this situation so I can go back to playing video games in my room?
That's a good question. Uh, so my goal with quitting video games wasn't to quit forever. It was to get to a point where I could manage it and
Gotcha.
moderate it. Because I didn't think I was addicted to it or anything. I just thought I played too much. Thought it was a problem.
Hmm.
And after these 9 months, I think it was, my friends were just talking casually about playing FIFA, and they were like, "Oh, wouldn't it be great if we all start playing like online pro clubs, like play all of our guys together, make a really great team?"
Hmm.
And my Xbox was in the cupboard, like in the closet, just wrapped up in a box. And I rushed to go and get it. I was like, "Oh, this would be awesome!" Yeah, not thinking about anything. I just thought, "Oh, I could play some video games with my mates." There's nothing to it. And yet, what happened was we all had this fun session gaming, and I thought I'll just go back to normal life. They stopped playing. I didn't stop,
Yeah.
and then I just went back. I went back to it. I couldn't stop myself from just destroying everything that I'd built up.
Jeez.
I broke up with my girlfriend. I started failing classes, wasn't sleeping, stopped exercising, stopped eating, just to play video games for 12 plus hours a day. And it happened in the space of 2 weeks. It just happened. It was just so happened to be that my friends asking me to go back was a trigger. For some people, a trigger could be watching a video game trailer or hearing some music from a game, anything. Just something that makes you snap back to that feeling that you once had. Your brain is like, oh, wouldn't it be great if we just go back and relive that? Because we were so happy when we were playing video games.
Yeah.
Nothing, nothing else mattered. We had no problems because you have no problems in the virtual world. There's nothing that can go wrong,
Yeah.
and so it's safe. And I think your brain is like, after a while, it forgets. Like after a while, the after after you've quit for a while, your brain forgets what that feels like until something reminds you of what it's like, or something just brings you back in just enough to taste it that you just get roped back in. And yeah, it turns out I was genuinely addicted to video games, and I went in and out of gaming at least 10 times between the age of 19 to 25, uh,
Wow.
10 to 15 times, just relapsing constantly.
So now you told me that you basically want to moderate it, but do you even go near video games now? Are you able to play for now, or you just don't touch it?
I can't.
Yeah.
I've learned that the very hard way. I'm sure there's a better way of saying that, but it has taken a lot of years, a lot of mistakes for me to realize that it's all or nothing for me. Um, and it's been a painful 6 years of learning that, because I was adamant that I could manage it, that I could moderate it, that
Uh,
if I had my job and I had like a girlfriend and I had everything that I needed, I would prioritize that over video games. And that just was not the case. It would be great for the first couple of weeks. I could moderate it fine, play an hour or
mhm.
two every few days or something. But then after about 2 weeks is when it really starts to derail itself and just fall back into complete self-destruction.
Jeez,
And
yeah.
it's quite unbelievable to see it happen. And yeah, every time it happened, I still thought that I could moderate it again in the future. And it's such a difficult cycle to get out. If anyone's struggled with addiction in any form, they will
Yeah.
know what that feels like. Because you don't just have you can't just snap back to normality and stop playing again. There's like 3 months where you're trapped in that mindset, and even if you're not playing video games, your brain is still kind of messed up from it all. It takes months to just reset and realize like what you need to do to get back on track, to bring back your goals, your priorities, because you have no love for anything anymore. It just gets stripped away from you after you've been sucked into it for months. And so there's that 3 months after you quit that's like a sobering up period where you
Yeah.
can't really do much of anything. So it still feels like you're trapped. And so if you just play for 1 hour, 2 hours, suddenly that's 6 months of your life gone.
Hmm.
And you really don't have much control over it.
In that period where you said that you were going through your ups and downs, and obviously, let's say you had quit for a month, 2 months, or whatever, what were the biggest triggers that you found? Because it was interesting that you mentioned music, commercials, and stuff that I had never even thought about. But for yourself, obviously, that first time was your friends. What other triggers did you find that just kind of said, you know what, maybe I'll give it a go today? Like,
I think the biggest one for me is Twitch,
okay,
like live streaming
yeah,
and YouTube videos, because there's one YouTuber, one Twitch streamer that I've watched since I was 18 or 19, every single day for 6 years. Every
wow,
single day. I didn't miss a beat. He's uploaded like 12,000 videos on YouTube, live streams 40 hours a week. I've watched every single one. And that was harder for me to stop than, than gaming, because it was become such a normal part of my life.
wow,
But the problem with Twitch is that you're often playing a game while watching Twitch on your other screen. And gaming is already stimulating enough. It's like
wow.
dopamine overload.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
It's crazy. Like they've done studies, and I'm sure there'll be more in the future, that showed brain activity in a might be an MRI scanner or something else that they used. But when you're in the height of a gaming session, your brain shows the same level of activity as someone taking cocaine or some other
wow,
hard drugs, and you're doing this for 6 hours straight. It's like
yeah,
if you did
it's
if you just did drugs for hours and hours and hours every day, it's gonna fuck you up.
yeah, I think
And
so.
yet it's so you've got, on top of good video games, it's Twitch as well, which is like another game. Someone's talking to you. You're a part of a community, so you've got all these friends that you're chatting to, and you feel like you're a part of something. And so it caters to so many of the base human needs.
Hmm.
And this is why gaming is so addictive. Um, I like to call gaming, porn, and takeaway food the trifecta of fulfillment.
Yeah,
So you have takeaway foods that fulfill a need for sustenance, and then you have porn that's sexual relationships and whatnot. And then you have gaming that stimulates your need for competitiveness, escape, connection, challenge, and achievement.
hmm,
And you have that's everything that a human being needs to survive and be healthy. So you're getting all this from video games, and then you're getting it all again from Twitch at the same time. And so coming off that and quitting that is a huge blow. And it's why I actually tell people, don't quit both of them at the same time. It
wow.
is so hard. And for anyone that doesn't deal with this problem, you'll probably looking at me like, what are you talking about? Just stop watching, stop playing video games. But it's really not that simple. And yeah, I get people telling me all the time, like, I don't want to keep watching YouTube videos on Netflix for hours a day, even though I've
Hmm.
quit gaming, I want to be productive. And I'm like, just don't worry for a couple of weeks. Like, just avoid gaming for a couple of weeks until you get through that first period of difficulty, because that is the most difficult period. and then you can figure things out. But during that period, you just got to avoid video games at all costs.
I, that's
And it's
that's interesting to me that you mentioned about how like it rewires your brain, and it's almost like
mm,
coming off is almost like a drug addict kind of weaning off of it, right? And but it's interesting to me because like I've never really played video games. Like my parents, we weren't allowed to have video games in my house, so I'd go to my friend's house to play N64, and for me that is still the pinnacle of like video game greatness. However, I did get my kids, my kids got a Nintendo Switch, right?
mm,
And we play Super Smash Brothers and that, and like my other son plays Fortnite. He's older, right? And I did notice that he'd get overly emotional, right? Like, and he's like, oh, he's a rage quitter. And he's calling out the other guy. And then I'm like, I don't even understand the lingo that you guys are saying to each other, man. But how how would you say that people get emotionally connected into video games? Because understand the sustenance part, but it almost seems like even watching my kid who's a 10-year-old, right, where he's like emotionally like engaged. Like I'm like, dude, it's not that heavy. But how did that kind of weigh into the your experience with video games? Like your investment into it, I guess.
mm. Yeah, it's the emotional aspect of it is really strong. Um, I was a completely different person when I played video games, just night and day different. I was quick to anger. I was bitter, um, just emotional, jealous. I didn't take care of myself, and obviously, when you're not eating and sleeping and exercising, it affects all your hormonal health and low testosterone, all this stuff, and it's like a just a huge mess going on inside your brain. And I think the reason why it's so engaging, so emotional, so you have so much invested in it, is because like any activity, it could be building a shed or I don't know, painting something. You're so 100% focused on that
Mm-hmm.
that nothing else really matters. But gaming is like Turner to 11.
Yeah.
In the same way that people fall in love with porn stars through a webcam or something,
Yeah.
like if you dedicate your whole life to something, that becomes your whole life. And so I'm not saying this is necessarily the same with your son, but for a lot of gamers, their entire identity is built up around video games.
Yeah.
If you take away gaming from most people, they have nothing to show for it. No achievements, no friends, no media that they can talk about, no interests,
Mm.
no hobby, nothing.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people they subconsciously realize that. Excuse me. And when it comes to playing a video game, getting invested in it, that is their entire life in a little box. And we get angry about it because we want to be good at it and it matters to be good at it because we haven't got anything else to be good at. So if someone rage quits, someone like pisses us off, insults her mom, whatever it might be,
Yeah.
and it's not just an insult, it's attacking our entire core identity,
Gotcha.
whether we realize that or not. And again, this more applicable to older gamers that have been doing
Mm-hmm.
it for hours a day for years. Um, and that's maybe someone will tell me otherwise, but that's my best hypothesis as to why it happens. So I thought about that same thing too.
It's yeah, because I was talking to a guy at work, right? And like I said, I don't play video games. I don't know anything about it. But some of them would talk about like, hey, let's get together. We'll play NBA 2K as a team. I'm like, why don't you guys just go outside and play basketball? Like, I'm so dumb. I'm just that's the way I see it. I'm like, man, I don't really want to do that, right? But a lot of the dudes there will be like, oh, give me your handle. And it seems like it's almost like video games has created its own society for
Hmm.
guys that this is kind of what we do. I'm handle at, I don't know, bazooka 105 or something, and I kind of feel like there's a lot more to it behind, like from a psychological perspective. Like I feel like now it's like it's a community within itself that I'll never really understand because I never really got into it. So, but I am observing that more and more people, and it's like you say, it becomes their identity, right?
Hmm.
And it's almost like I got no other hobbies. I don't do anything outside of this. This is all I do. Like I was talking to a guy who's telling me about Halo and trying to explain it to me. He's like, "Yo, you should definitely try it out." But I'm like, I got no interest, man. And
Hmm.
honestly, being free from it, I'd rather just play Super Smash Brothers with my kids. It's still fun, and it's communal, and it's kind of like N64 back in the day where we would play like Mario Kart.
Hmm.
They're the most rudimental games, man. But honestly, it was just fun having six people, yelling at each other in a room versus six people online. And going back to the one subject, I guess that I was thinking about when you mentioned it, do you think there is kind of like a form of duality that develops within people that play video games? Because it seems like some people will be a certain way in the real world, and it's almost like now that they're in, I don't know, kind of the metaverse or whatever it may be, it's almost like they become a different person, like you mentioned. Do you think that happens with everybody or just with some people, I guess?
I think what video games allow us to do is to change who we are and pretend to be someone we're not. And so, if we have problems with anxiety, with our personal image, which a lot of gamers do because they're socially deprived and haven't really built those necessary skills,
Mm-hmm.
what they're able to do is like channel their identity into this character and live vicariously through them,
Mm.
exploring these worlds, defeating these dragons, getting the woman, things they can't do in real life necessarily. And so you become a lot more comfortable with the person that you are in the game than you are with yourself. And that causes you to act in different ways when you're not playing. I know I did this as well. I hid my gaming usage and lied about it a lot to friends and family. Even after I told people that I'd quit gaming, I was still playing because I was doing it on the sly. I was pretending I had a job. All this, like it was crazy the lengths that I would go to
Oh.
just to lie because I wanted like an extra 2 hours of avoiding responsibility. And God, it's such a. It was a really good question, actually. it's and yeah, I definitely think that there is that duality there. You live, especially if you're deep into it. If you're a hardcore
Mm.
gamer and you play, I feel like people tend to play more like big RPG games where you can explore for hundreds of hours in this incredible, beautiful world,
Yeah.
and you, yeah, you just become so uncomfortable with who you are that you spend more time as a character and forget your identity. That duality builds itself up and manifests itself in a lot of different ways.
I mean, that's interesting. It's like I said, I'm just an observer, but
Hmm.
I'll even because my son, like I said, will play Fortnite, and he used to watch people play online, and these guys would just be like, "No, blah blah blah," and they're just yelling at each other, this that, and I'm like, at the end of the day, man, I'm like, it's a virtual character, dog, like, you
Yeah,
know. And
it's
from my
crazy.
bonehead perspective, I was never able to really understand it, right? But the way you explain it, it makes more sense because it's
Hmm.
kind of like I've invested my time into this, and a lot of guys have invested money into it, which
Hmm.
is another question I have for you. How much money did you spend in it? Let's say upgrading your characters or just putting it into, I don't know, Xbox is the one that you played, right?
Yeah, Xbox and PC. Um, that's a tough question to answer. Not as much as a lot of people, honestly.
Well, that's good.
Um, I mean, growing up, my parents bought everything, or most
Okay.
things for me. And then as a student, I was broke anyway, so I didn't really spend much in university. But every year, maybe $100 or so. Like
It's
it
not
really
bad.
wasn't a lot. I wasn't a spender, never really have been.
Oh, that's
It
good.
was, yeah. But you hear stories of people spending $200,000 in 1 week on a Transformers game on
Yeah.
mobile. And it's so many stories of this happening. What people don't realize is that these gaming companies are targeting these people specifically. So they have a term called whales, which
Okay.
is borrowed from the gambling industry. And maybe someone enters the casino and they're a target. They're going to spend a lot of money, so they give them more stuff and make them feel welcome and that kind of thing. But they use AI software. I'm not going to get very deep into the technicals of it, mostly because I can't.
Yeah.
They use this AI software that allows them to figure out who's going to be a big spender. And what they'll do is they'll give this person a completely different experience on a game than somebody else. So let's say, example, in Fortnite, you can buy all these skins and costumes,
Tell me
whatever.
about it.
And what they'll do, if they think that this whale is on the edge of purchasing a certain item, maybe it's some like, I don't know, Iron Man costumes. I literally don't know anything about Fortnite.
Good.
That was out of my generation. But it costs so and so money. What they'll do is they'll put that player in games with more people wearing that Iron Man suit.
Ah.
And it's like a really subtle way of getting them to think, oh yeah, that'll look really cool. I just got killed by someone in an Iron Man suit. Screw it, I'm going to go and buy it. And they'll do that in so many different ways. They'll show different discounts and offers to people, depending on how likely they are to buy, based on their previous spending habits. And you can go and look up the patents for EA, for Activision, all this software. They're hiring professional psychologists all the time to figure out how to get you to spend more money. And it is a really, really toxic, terrible industry that has no regulation, like gambling. There's nothing stopping them from doing this. And it's preying on kids. Like it's like the gambling industry, but if you marketed it to 5-year-olds. And it's such a horrific thing that's going on, and nobody realizes it because, as you said earlier, gaming has become kind of cult-like. And people don't realize that there's over 2.5 billion gamers in the world. There's not 2.5 billion people doing anything.
I don't think
Like,
so.
it doesn't matter if it's football or soccer or whatever else. You don't have that many people. Well, maybe soccer.
Yeah, maybe soccer.
And if anyone from England's going to watch this and
Soccer,
berate
how
me for
dare
saying
he?
soccer, yes, just the king's sport.
Yeah.
And over half the world plays. There was a study recently done in the UK, like 60-70% of kids play video games. And again, people don't realize that if you take, so what people don't realize is that if you take all of the movie industry, Hollywood, Bollywood, Netflix, Disney Plus, HBO, literally everything you can think of, every streaming service, Prime Video, and you combine that with the entire music industry, so Spotify and concert tickets, festivals, merchandise, album sales, Apple Music, YouTube Music, everything, and you combine those two together, you're still nowhere near gaming in terms of revenue and size. Nowhere near.
So,
and the amount of money and resources they have available to, I mean, people don't trust films, they don't trust media, they don't like music, they don't do anything, but they'll blindly defend gaming until their last breath. They get so triggered if you attack it. There's no more toxic communities than gamers. I mean, literally there is, but I'm being a bit, it's, and they have so much power to manipulate and convince people that video games are healthy, video games are fun and should be shared by everyone and whatever else. If they want you to think something, they will. It's the same thing that the smoking industry did, the drinking industry, the gambling industry. Every 20 years you had a new one come in. First, it was like smoking way back when, then alcohol, or alcohol first, then smoking, then gambling, and now it's video games and porn.
Yep.
And it is you just go back and watch all the adverts, everything. It's all exactly the same, just history repeating itself. And they're doing the same things by skirting regulations. In Europe, for example, loot boxes are banned from a lot of countries, so you can't have gambling for kids,
Okay.
as you should. You can't purchase a something to gamble with real money in those games. So
Yeah.
they just get around it. They use different terminology. It's no longer a loot box. So now they can use it again in their video games. Because
Wow.
and they can just keep doing this, keep rewriting until they get forced to regulate much harder. Like now, if you have a gambling advert on TV in the UK, they have to follow it up with "Be gamble aware." You have to be responsible. Have to do all this stuff. Same with alcohol. You have to have all these restrictions and regulations. But heaven forbid you tell someone that their 3-4-year-old kid shouldn't be playing FIFA because it's got gambling in it. And if it's linked to mommy and daddy's credit card, they can just spend and spend and spend.
Hmm.
You ain't getting that money back.
No.
Suddenly you're demonized for saying these kinds of things. And it's absolutely cult-like. The way that gaming has grown has become so... Yeah.
Well,
I can't think of any way to describe it.
I think the best way to describe it is unregulated, man.
Hmm.
Like it's just a free for all, is the way I see it. Because I found it kind of strange where I told my son, I'm like, oh, this game's crazy and it's completely free. I'm like, wow, as a kid, I probably would have loved to have played this. Like completely free. What a sweet deal, man.
Yeah.
This is unreal. And then all of a sudden he's like, yeah, I want to buy this skin, right? He's like, I don't want to be a default. But the one thing that one thing that kind of I guess made me think, or the way I looked at it, it's almost like they've developed a caste system within a game. And now these kids, and I'm like, and I told my son, hey, I'm like, hey, don't be a dick. He was calling this other kid a default. I'm like, hey, I was probably that poor kid. If that was me, I would have been happy enough to just have, the console. And
Hmm.
I probably would have been that default character running around. And it's almost like they got these kids thinking like it's almost like a class system within the game, right? Where it's like, oh, he's a default, he's a loser. I got the Venom skin because I'm awesome. I'm like, nah, dog, like I got you that Venom skin and I could take it back. Like I'm not gonna leave you with it. Like, how dare you? I'm like, be nice to that poor default character, man.
Hmm.
Maybe his parents don't have money or whatever the case may be. But it's almost like, man, because the first time I ever heard that term a whale was when I was learning about pharmaceuticals, right?
Hmm.
Because I was kind of studying into that, and then the term came up again. I was watching Dope Sick. I don't know if you've heard of it, where it's about OxyContin and that whole
Hmm.
mess in the States. And they would talk about certain doctors that were whales because they would just be like, yeah, I'll prescribe it to everybody, made them tons of money, everybody gets addicted, right? And again, it kind of goes back to that whole, we're not regulating anything and it's just a free for all. But I mean, now that you're telling me this about video games, it makes perfect sense. But at the same time, it's hard for me to digest because it seems so benign, right? Like,
Hmm.
video games. And I think that's how they probably get away with it, is that everybody's unsuspecting about it. Like, I
Yeah.
know I am. I would have never until you told me. I'm like, wait, what? Why are they
Yeah.
hiring psychologists?
It's crazy. And it's the same reason that people used to think that smoking was healthy and
Oh,
drinking and all this stuff. Like it's the same parallels from all these other industries. But gaming has become so normalized, especially with our society now. It's so online, it's connected.
hmm.
There's so much pressure to always be like to have the best thing, the newest thing, and kids they just like got that default thing. It was yeah, the amount of mums I've talked to complaining about Fortnite, it's
Jeez.
it was an epidemic.
Hmm.
And yeah, it is very much, and I wouldn't be surprised if they knew what they were doing with these games when they implemented these systems, like you said, a class system kind of type thing. It wouldn't surprise me if they built that up from the start and they like made accounts to use the word default in forums as a derogatory term on Reddit, just build it up over time,
Hmm.
bring it into mainstream uh, talk. just hire some Chinese bot farm to like send out all these tweets, and it really wouldn't surprise me if they did that. And then you've got like the same thing that happens with most corporations is that a few gaming companies own almost everything.
Yeah.
And so if they want you to think a certain way, or if they want you to play a game a certain way, buy things in a certain way, they're going to get you to do that because they have total market domination. And
Jeez.
yeah, it's just a huge. There's so much behind the scenes that people don't see because they just dismiss it as it's just gaming. There's no harm in it. But I don't care if people play video games. I've got nothing against them. They can be healthy. They can be fine. What my issue is people defending it until the day they die, saying there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, clearly it's not healthy to have a kid that's like, I don't know, even young as like 4 or 5 playing video games for hours a day.
Yeah.
Because one of the things you touched on earlier about it came to me while you were talking, like with your son getting angry at video games, and it's something that was really, it was put in a really good way when I went to a conference recently by this guy called Michael Foster, Pastor Michael Foster. And he said that video games are arguably one of those masculine things that we can do.
Okay.
And I looked at him, I was like, where's he going with this?
Yeah.
Because what you're doing is you're working with your friends and you're accomplishing objectives, challenging each other, joking with each other, helping each other, building each other up, and having a really good time. You're being competitive, fighting, all this stuff. It's got every component you could possibly think of. But when you turn the console off, you've got nothing to show for it.
Yeah.
So inherently, they're extremely masculine. But when you dive into it, they are so unfulfilling. Once you spend hours and hours and hours in this virtual world with a few pixels as a reward, like just a trophy on a screen or a new costume or something.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you got 100 headshots. Great, you've done this. All right, it took you 3 hours. You could have read like 200 pages of a book or something. Like it's
something.
Or played a sport or done your homework or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And so that's what separates it from being something like a combat sport. So you go to a jiu-jitsu gym or something, an MMA gym, got all these guys being hyper masculine, competitive, fulfilling, you're learning a skill, getting fit and exercising, sharpening your mind, your reflexes. That's another thing as well. I don't know if you ever heard someone say that they play video games to get fast reflexes.
No, I've never, but I
That's
mean,
one of the
I guess
most
it makes sense.
Yeah, that's one of the most common reasons why people say they play video games. It's either to play with their friends, to have fun, or to improve their reflexes. And I'm like, what reflexes are you improving?
Yeah.
Someone comes at you with a knife in the street. That's what you think you're building reflexes for. You're just gonna die.
Down B. It's like...
Yeah, like the reflexes you're building playing video games have no real world use except to be better at video games, which a lot of people want to do. They want to become esports professionals and win $1 million from tournaments.
Yeah.
And that's another reason why Fortnite was such a peeve of mine. It was so many parents a few years ago. This kid in the UK won $1 million in a tournament. So many kids then use that as an excuse to justify their Fortnite habit.
Yeah.
You are over, I think it's about 1,000 times less likely to become a pro gamer than you are to play in the NBA.
Wow, and the NBA is the hardest league to get into.
Yeah, and you're 1,000 times less likely to become a pro gamer that can support themselves from their income. Because there's so many more people doing it. You have to start at like the average. I don't really know basketball, but I imagine the average age for people is between, say, 18 and 31 or 32 or something. It's
Yeah.
like retirement age, maybe
Yeah. Mid
similar to
30s.
soccer, mid 30s.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but as a gamer, your working career is between the ages of 12 and 20.
What?
And like, yeah, that's when most games retire, is early 20s,
It's
because they
probably
become too slow. And yet they think that they're gonna become this huge Fortnite player, make millions of dollars,
yeah.
and then live the rest of their lives. In reality, they're gonna scrape by earning $20,000 from a tournament, maybe 1 year, and then suddenly they get to 23 and they can't play anymore. So what are you gonna do? What
Something
skills do
else.
you have?
Nothing. Nothing.
Yeah, you could
Which
become a coach, a commentator, or something, but it's
uh,
like
yeah.
esports. Yeah, esports isn't nearly as big as people expected it to be at this point. They have
hmm
huge predictions for the growth of esports, and it
Yeah.
just hasn't manifested in any way. I'm sure it will in the future if the metaverse takes off and all this stuff, which I don't want it to be. I'm severely anti-metaverse.
Nor do I. I'm not a fan of Neuralink. None of this. I'm like, yeah,
Yeah,
it's a little bit too much. And I
just give
mean,
me
it's
a yeah,
let me go to the Yukon instead.
yeah, give me a cabin in the woods, man.
Yeah, because it's kind of like it seems like it's getting more invasive, I guess.
Hmm,
I mean, let me give you an example of a dude. Like, I remember one time I had this one friend and we were both working, right? And we'd always travel across Canada. We'd go set up these stores for a company called Loblaws. And we were always in our hotel rooms, right? But me and my other friend were like, hey, we're gonna go to the gym. And we tell this guy, and he's like, oh no, man, I'm working on I used to make fun of it, so I don't know the real name. I think it was called Skyrim.
yeah.
Skyrim, I think it was, where he was a big Viking guy. And he's like, dude, I gotta go through my world. He's like, I already put like 1,000 hours. I'm like, okay, what are you doing today? Because I'm like, we're gonna go work out. And you want to come with us? He's like, no, no, no. I'm gonna be working out my guy. I'm like, what do you mean you're working out your Viking character, dog? Like, I'm like, why don't you get off your ass and go do something? He's like, no, man. And he would just literally smoke weed and play video games. Like that was this man's life. And I'm seeing it pop up more and more. And it was interesting that you brought up the fact that, hey, you know what, it is a very masculine activity because and this kind of ties back to like I don't know if you ever watched Jordan Peterson talk
Hmm,
or you know read his books where he always talks about the same mythos that occurs in every single story pretty much for the male archetype of how we become the hero is like you go out on a journey, you explore, you know, you find your damsel in distress, you kill the dragon, come home with the damsel in distress who's now your wife, and you start building from there, right?
hmm.
And I think for a lot of people it's almost like I'm just quote unquote fulfilled by, you know, conquering the dragons, but there's nothing to show for it at the end of the day, and it's just becoming more empty and more empty and more empty.
Hmm.
How did your life change, first of all, because we didn't really touch on that, but like how did your life change after you totally got rid of the video games in your life? Like what did you actually start to pursue afterwards? Was it just university took off? Like how did your life change?
So that was a year or two ago, I think. It wasn't that long really, but I'd actually just moved to Thailand.
Oh, nice.
I was working. We spoke before the start of this about my trip up to the Yukon
Mm-hmm.
to Canada, like this 3 week expedition. Um, and that was during like the most gaming intensive, depressive year of my life. I was at rock bottom. I'd invested like $6,000 into this trip, and I was ready to cancel it because I just didn't want to go.
Mm-hmm.
But I went, and I came back, felt like a new person, like refreshed, pure, ready to take on the world, all these goals.
Uh-huh.
And I came back. Obviously, I didn't have my phone or anything while I was out there, and I realized I'd lost my job when I was away. The place I was working at closed down. I hadn't been paid. Rent didn't go
Ooh.
out. I was getting kicked out. So I went from like rock bottom to like top of the
Even worse.
world
Yeah.
to just straight back down again. And that's when I made the decision, you got to do something. Just had that talk with myself. And so I learned to code, taught myself to code.
Nice.
4 or 5 months later, became a freelancer, got my start. in this junior digital marketing role for Game Quitters, the company that started it all for me. And I'd been in good touch with the owner for a while, and like part of the community, some coaching programs here and there. And yeah, he offered me this job. He was living in Thailand at the time. I was like, why don't I pay you $1,000 a month?
Mm.
You come and fly out here with me. I was like, shit, you can just do that. And I booked a one-way flight. It's 2 years later. And I was in Thailand working online, became a freelancer, built my own SEO, like marketing platform, built Gamefree while I was out there, like YouTube videos. And so I've got a friend who has a really successful alcohol addiction company,
Nice.
very similar story to mine. And he gave me a lot of advice, helped me build this business up. And yeah, that was just the clarity, the ability to have a goal and actually pursue it instead of retreating when it became difficult. Having that fire, the energy to wake up, hit the gym, get to work. Sex life was great.
I
Like
could
everything
imagine.
that you could think of that couldn't be improved got improved. And it was, I don't even recognize the person that I was before when I play
Wow.
video games. And people even experience this after 30 days or 90 days away from gaming, because it is like this huge weight has been lifted from you. That's very easy to explain to someone that's overcome any addiction,
Mm.
and it's very difficult to explain to someone who hasn't. But it's a really, you just feel so relieved. That's the only way that I can put it. You're no longer trying to avoid people and cancel events and lie to people and hide things and go to sleep at 3 in the morning with no energy and like have no job, and literally every possible thing you could think of improved
Wow.
after I stopped playing. And yeah, I can't see a world where I do go back, because it's just, yeah, I don't know how many times I can say it. It's
Yeah.
how many different, get the thesaurus out and figure out how many ways I can phrase it. Yeah, best thing I ever did by far.
That's awesome, man. But you know, it kind of scares me though, because you went through this journey and luckily you got out of it, uh, you got through it. And
Mm.
now the one thing that kind of frightens me is that as time progresses, these games are only getting more addictive. They're getting better. And now we got younger generations of men who I don't know, I think they're more lost, it seems.
Yeah.
Because I'll talk to a lot of men now, and I've had a couple people already in the show talk about porn addiction, right?
That's something I deal with a lot as well, with a lot of
Yeah,
guys I speak to.
I would imagine it kind of just partners up perfectly with video games, right? And I've seen a lot of memes too, where a lot of guys like, yeah, I do porn, video games, and I eat fast food, kind of like the trifecta terror that you mentioned earlier. And I see that more and more men are just kind of falling into that. So the one thing I kind
Yeah.
of want to close off before you give us all your contact information is, what advice would you offer for these guys that are kind of going through it right now? Game quitters, contact James Good. But what other advice could they start applying right now?
Oh, this is a very good question and a very tough question to answer. Um, well, I will clear up. I'm no longer with Game Quitters.
All right, never mind. Just
Now
contact James Good.
it's all game free.
Okay.
Um, but we, yeah, it's, you have to. It's like you said, we've got more men without direction than ever before. We've got less father figures, role models, people to look up to, people to help us out, less community, less motivation, more anxiety, more stress, whatever, more things pulling our attention in every direction. Social media, porn, gaming, drinking, drugs, whatever, they've always been there, but now weed is even more is accessible as
Oh yeah.
anything else, depending on where you live. And if you're a guy who just wants to keep playing video games, sees no problem with it, I probably can't help you. If you don't, there's the old thing, like if you don't want to change, you're not going to change. But if you do play a lot of video games and you want to improve your life, want to get more energy, get back your discipline, work towards your goals, great relationship, build a business, whatever it might be, you have to reprogram the way that you think about video games. You can't just try and quit for like 30 days or whatever and see how it goes. You have to really break down the way that you think about them. And I like to do this in 3 steps with people, this transformation process. So, what you need to do is figure out what exactly it is that gaming is adding to your life, what it's taking away. Think about how you feel when you're playing video games. And then you have to go through all of the different like social conditioning and biases that you've been led to believe about video games over the years, all the lies, victim mentality stuff like having an addictive personality, which doesn't exist. And then arguably the most important part is life after video games. What you do then, and that's all about building a system, roadmap, goals, all of this stuff. So, breaking down the first step a bit more, I suppose. One thing I like to run through people with is this small kind of thought thought scenario. Is imagine there are 2 restaurants, A and B. Restaurant A is really close to you, all your friends go there, everyone tells you it's incredible, like it's always full, it's reasonably priced, and yet every time you eat there, you just feel sick and nauseous and stressed, and you don't really like it, but you keep going back because everyone tells you to do it. And restaurant B is like really far away, and you never even thought about going there because everyone's told you to avoid it. Reviews are terrible and whatever. But one day you decide to check out restaurant B. And after years of feeling sick eating at restaurant A every day, you eat at restaurant B and suddenly you feel on top of the world. You feel incredible. This is the most energizing, rejuvenating food you've ever had. There's no one there. There are a couple of people sitting around that look really happy. And you wonder, why has no one ever come here before? So you go back to tell all your friends, and they just try and drag you back to restaurant A. They don't want you to go there. They don't believe that it's any good. And then you just replace, obviously, gaming and not gaming with restaurant A and restaurant B, and it's exactly the same. Once you realize what gaming is doing to you and the effects it is having on you, you might not even be addicted to gaming. You might just be avoiding your responsibility. You might be escaping into this world, engaging in that hero journey we talked about earlier in Skyrim, like becoming the hero of your own life. If you can break down what the effects are on your life, the negative, the positive, if there are any, and then you look into the social stuff. Am I going to be jealous of my friends if I'm not playing? That's people's biggest fear. Is like, I want to play with my friends. They're having so much fun. But really, they're not. All you see is how gaming makes them feel, and not what it's actually doing to them. So instead of looking at the fact that it's making you have sleepless nights, making you stop exercising or eating right, or being emotional, angry, bitter, breaking up your relationships, neglecting your responsibilities, you just look at how it makes you feel. And in the moment, it feels great. And that's how you think about it when you look at your friends playing video games. You see them in your Discord channel talking to each other, and you think, oh, if I could just be a part of that. But you have to separate emotion from fact.
Yeah.
And then there's that idea of having an addictive personality. And I was guilty of this for years, just convinced I had an addictive personality. When in reality, it's not that you have an addictive personality, so you become addicted to things. It's because you engage in an addictive behavior for so long that you are naturally more likely to gravitate towards these addictive habits. So because I played video games for years, I was then more likely to keep playing video games and
Yeah.
watch porn and social media and whatever else, YouTube. And so you have to do all this. And if you want, I've got a 50-minute free training video. I don't sell you anything. I don't do anything to it. I can just, you can put a link to that in the description
Oh,
below.
for sure, man, for sure.
So I give out all my stuff for free pretty much. And so it's a really informative video. And it will go through the last process of mapping out your goals, systems, habits, all this stuff, to finally, after all that, to finally build the life that you really deserve and level up in real life. And that's basically a simplified version of the journey that it takes.
That's
Which
excellent.
may not specifically be what you asked.
No, but
If you just want like a sentence, maybe I could do that. But
sentence for something so intricate probably wouldn't work. No, I loved it because you know what, you tied it in perfectly. Where it's like you got to go through all those different things if you really want to reach where you want to go. And I think the most important thing that you mentioned right off the hop is like the only people that want to change are those that actually want to change. You know,
yeah.
you can't help people that are happily lost doing whatever it is that they're doing. It's kind of like I can't really go up to a crackhead and be like, "Hey, man, I want to change your life." And he's like, I don't want to, you know. It's the same deal, you know, whether it's video games, porn, whatever, you know, pick your poison, which ultimately they all kind of are. But
Yeah.
I love the way you tied it in. Now, James, where can we find you? Where can they follow you on social media? Tell us all that good stuff.
Yeah. So I'm gamefree.gg. Pretty much everywhere. On Instagram, James Gamefree, and on YouTube as well. If you go to gamefree.gg, you can find that training video or probably a link in the description below.
Yep.
45, 50 minutes. If you're serious about stopping. And I also have a program called Level Up, which
Gotcha.
is like 10 videos, 8 worksheets. And I think doing some kind of discount on that is again super cheap, like $50. That'll completely transform the way that you think about video games, and you quit gaming in a way that you have no cravings, you have no bitterness, no jealousy of other people. You just become free. That's what all my YouTube videos are about. All my training, everything is. It's not just quitting, it's becoming free and breaking away from games and taking back control of your life, because so many of us lost control and we need it more
Yeah.
now more than ever.
Amen to that. All right. On that note, everybody, have yourselves a great night. James, until we talk again.
Take care, man. Thank you.